Hey everybody, welcome to my very first Q&A video. The way I want these to work is that this is video number 1 and a bunch of you have got your questions in that I'm going to try to answer, so thank you for that. But please get your questions in for the next Q&A in the comments here. That's how I want it to work. It's funny, I was watching a couple of videos over the last month or so, like guys like Ola England and Adam Neely, these big time YouTube channels, going, yeah, this Q&A thing is a pretty cool idea. Maybe that's something I should do. And I was like, nah, nobody'd be interested in that. And then I got a message on Instagram, xtoothx, reads, hey, have you considered doing an FAQ style video on YouTube, something like Ola England is doing? This was like the same day I was thinking about this, and I was like, well, that's clearly a sign I'm gonna have to go away and do this. So let's get into the questions. I threw these out on my last live stream and on my Facebook page. So if you're not already subscribed to this channel and you're interested in this stuff, please hit that subscribe button, and then you can check out my Facebook page, facebook.com/LeonToddMusic. And if you're interested in supporting the channel, please support my music. Check out my band Ragdoll. We are on all the streaming platforms, and you can find us at facebook.com/ragdollrock. So first question I'm going to do from xtoothx. He says, let's see, where's the question? La-di-da-di-da-da-da. I'm curious, how do you set up your guitar string height? From what I hear, I think it's low. Personally, I'm very picky about it. La-di-da-di-da, yada yada yada. I think that setup was one of the major factors to guitar tone. I definitely agree with that. If you have watched my series on the Plek, I get all my guitars plecked by Tim Thompson at MT Guitars, and I was very cynical about this when I first did it. I was just kind of like, yeah, whatever, I know how to set my guitars up. They all play okay, and they sound pretty good, but when I went and got my first guitar pleck, my beat up Greco, it just came to life. It was an okay sounding guitar, and then it just turned into a really great sounding, great playing guitar. I like the action quite low. I think it's just whatever the standard Plek low action is. And yeah, it's made a huge difference. I can play my guitars in drop C with a low action, and they don't buzz anywhere, and they're in tone perfectly everywhere, and more importantly, they stay in tune, and I think they sound better. There's no dead spots on the neck. For me, I remember my buddy Troy bought a Sir about 6 years ago, and I played it, and I like wanted to cry, because I was like, oh my god, this is the best playing guitar I've ever played. This is so inspiring and so amazing, it sounds so good. And I thought that was just because, yeah, John Suhr is a genius, which he is. John Suhr is a great guitar builder. And yeah, after speaking to Tim and having some of my guitars set up, they all kind of play like Suhrs now, which is really inspiring. And obviously Suhr was an early adopter of the Plek. And the Plek's not like a magic thing. Any luthier who knows what they're doing can set up a guitar well, but the advantage of the Plek, I think, is that it gives such precise data that it can make a good luthier's work even better. And yeah, so set up your guitars. If you can, go and get them plecked. I'm a big fan of that process. Again, if you can't get them plecked, at least look up what you should be looking for, string heights and things like that. Get your guitar's truss rod adjusted. That's probably the most important thing. Get those string heights right, and get your pickup heights right, and your guitar will not only play better, but it will sound better. Do I prefer single coils or humbuckers? Well, that's kind of one of those things. Do I prefer ice cream or chocolate cake? They're both pretty good. They're both really good together. In fact, the main guitar I'm playing at the moment is this STI LJ1, and I've actually got a humbucker pickup in the bridge, basically for rock and metal tones, like bridge humbucker, one of my favorite guitar sounds of all time, and then a humbucker size P90 in the neck position, because I love single coils in the neck position. When I play a Strat, I reckon probably 70% of the time I play on the neck pickup, and maybe like 25% of the time it's neck and middle. They're my favorite positions on a Strat. And I normally find neck humbuckers are just like, it's hard to play rhythm guitar on them all the time. They're amazing for lead stuff, but I like playing rhythm guitar on the neck pickup for kind of like a spongy kind of thing, and having a P90 in the neck of this Les Paul style guitar really does the trick for me. So these pickups are made by a guy called Martin A. Smith. I'll put a link to his website in the video description, and yeah, they're pretty amazing pickups, so check those out. So yeah, single coils or humbuckers, I love them both. I love P90s, I love basically every type of pickup. It really depends on the setting. Okay, John G asks, what is the most important thing that a new AX8 user should know, and I would probably say that it is not a magic device. It's not going to work miracles, meaning that, you know, if you hear somebody playing through an AX8 and you copy every single element of their rig, you're still not going to sound exactly the same as them. So if you want to sound good on any piece of gear that you play, the most important thing is that you don't suck. So go away and practice really, really hard. That's the most important thing, and it's the most important part of any guitar rig, I think. John G also asks, do I use an FRFR system or a power amp? Well, the answer would be that I actually use both. Most of the time, when I gig with the AX8, I will check with the venue that we're going to play at before and just have a look at what their monitor system is like. If they have a fairly decent monitor system, who am I kidding, even if they have a crappy monitor system, I basically just go straight to the PA and get a feed from there. However, if there's absolutely no monitoring or anything like that, then I do use a Mesa 2x12 cab with a Matrix GT800 effects. I love the way that sounds, and it works really well for me. I find we do like a lot of country gigs. What I mean by country gigs is like outside of the metro area in Perth. So a lot of the time, you know, we take our own PA and we can only really take a vocal PA, so we are relying on amps to do that. But at the moment, we're kind of transitioning and we are building ourselves an in-ears rig, and we're beefing up our little PA so that we've got a sub, and everything's going to go through the PA, and we're going to be on ears for our monitoring, for all that kind of thing. So that's pretty exciting, and I will do a video about how I'm building that rig for ragdoll gigs. Have I tried any of the Ormsby guitars before? Yes, I have. I've tried their multi-scales. I think I played maybe the first multi-scale Perry ever made over 10 years ago. There's another local luthier called Andrew Ellis who makes acoustic guitars, and they did kind of like a guitar day. Yeah, far out. This is maybe longer than 10 years ago now. I'll have to double check the dates. But I remember going down there, and Perry had sort of built his first multi-scale. He had a multi-scale 6 and a multi-scale 8. I remember going and hanging out there, and I've known Perry for quite a while now. He's a huge 80s metal freak. Probably doesn't want people knowing that because so many of his customers I know are sort of into the modern metal thing, the prog thing, the gent thing, and his guitars are really great for that. I really love the finishes on his guitars. There's not many people in the world who know how to finish a guitar like that guy, and the you know, the multi-scale thing, he's one of the guys who's really pushed that, and I've played him. I really like the whole concept there, and I should probably reach out to him and try to get one to demos, so watch this space. Jeff Smiley asks, are there going to be some upcoming videos with the band, rehearsing, jamming, all that kind of stuff? Definitely. We've just been on holiday for the last month. I went to Japan for 2 weeks. Our singer Ryan went to Europe for a month with his family to go and watch his brother get married and basically, you know, have a long overdue holiday. So we've had a little bit of downtime there. All the songs, the music for all the songs anyway, is sort of written, and the way that we're doing it is we're going in and we're rehearsing up 2 songs at a time and then tracking them. So we're working at the rate of about 2 songs a month at the moment. So it is a slow process, but it's a very satisfying process, and the plus side is that I can make a bunch of content around it as well. So there'll definitely be more videos coming from that, from the rehearsal side, from the recording side, from the writing side, and I also want to do a series of videos where I'm talking about, you know, basically tips for surviving if you're in a band that's transitioning from being a local band, you know, maybe to being a national or an international band where you're going on tour and you're doing things like that. So struggles of the modern musician, I should probably call that one. So yeah, definitely there are going to be more of those coming. Dan Stevens asks, how do I take my AX8 live patches and transition them to recording patches? And my advice would be, don't try to do that. Approach them as 2 separate things. If you've got a favorite IR or a favorite amp model that you like using live, try that in the studio, but do not be afraid to totally tweak stuff out and do things differently, because it is such a different environment. What I would recommend that's more important tweaking is looking at your signal chain, you know, down from the AX8. If you imagine your AX8 is essentially, it's your amplifier and your speaker cabinet and your mic positioning. That's what you're capturing there, and the extra features are going to be running it into a good quality mic preamp, good quality converters into an interface, and then dialing in appropriate tones for the track that you're playing on, and you should be doing that on a track-by-track basis, in my view. For live stuff, most of the time you can have 1 or 2 patches and it's going to be great, but the whole point of recording to me is being creative and trying new things and doing things that are appropriate for the song as well. So approach it with a bit more of an open mind, I would say. Continuum Vegas asks, is Ragdoll going to be coming back to the USA or Vegas very soon? I know who Continuum Vegas is. That's my friend Erica, so thanks for adding the comment in there, Erica. We really want to come back as soon as we can. At the moment, we're finishing the record. Hopefully we can get back over for summer next year and at least play a few shows. And I still can't believe that of all the places I've played in the world, probably the best audiences Ragdoll's ever had is in Las Vegas, you know, showbiz city. So it's an amazing place to play, and I really want to go back as soon as I can because I love playing in the States. I love playing in Vegas. It's the best of times. So the torpedo captor with studio monitors, yay or nay? Well, one thing that you should factor in is the captor only has quite a limited sort of cab sim. So what I would recommend as a really good rig, if you want to get the captor because it's so affordable, grab the captor, grab something like a Moore radar so that you can load in a bunch of different IRs and then run that into your studio monitors. That's going to sound pretty slamming for home practice. However, there are many cheaper alternatives. If you've got a computer, I'd probably recommend get a little interface, you know, something like a Scarlett 2i2, hook it up, get something like Mercurial Reaccess, studio monitors, it's going to sound amazing, or even the PRS Waves amp sims, because you can run them on your desktop, and that is probably going to be, you know, a cheaper and easier way to do that. But if you do really love your amp, get the captor. It's a great piece of gear. Now, in terms of practice tips, there's so many things that I could recommend, but if you feel like you're getting stuck, what I would suggest is try and basically just try and expose yourself to a new style of music. You know, if you're really listening to heaps of heavy metal and you're really practicing hard with a metronome trying to shred, go and listen to some jazz or something like that. Pick up an acoustic guitar. Listen to music that doesn't even have a guitar in it. And especially try transcribing music by other instruments. I've found that, you know, listening to sax players or violin players has really opened up my eyes to cool new stuff on the guitar. So I often find that that kind of mindset of trying to get really good at guitar and getting stuck comes from trying to sound like other guitar players. So just do the opposite of what you're doing for a little bit, or take a break and see how it goes. So this whole thing about, you know, pieces of technology which basically outlast their prime, and then they go through this process where nobody wants them, but then for one reason or another they suddenly become, you know, rediscovered as classics. You know, valve amplifiers are definitely a case of this. You know, the Gibson Les Paul is a case of this. You know, at the time you couldn't give them away, and then the late 60s people start playing them, prominent guitarists, and they become desirable. And nowadays if you want to buy a 59 Les Paul, you know, good luck, because they're so hard to attain and they're so expensive. Can you see a similar thing happening with modelers? It's a really tough question. I think because modelers have the intent of trying to replicate those vintage and classic amps, that, you know, I guess you could easily argue that no, they're just going to keep getting superseded, much like computers, you know. But at the same time, if you look at, you know, video games and you look at computers, there is that huge retro movement there where people are, you know, seeking out old Mega Drives to play the games on, or people are doing, you know, emulator consoles that you can play that have all this kind of stuff on there. And I kind of see the modeler thing as like, you know, a really great emulator. It's almost like, you know, are people still going to care about a PS4 in 50 years? It's impossible to know because the technology is moving so fast. Will it just be, oh yeah, you know, in 20 years, oh, remember the Axe effects? Oh yeah, that was okay for the time, but you know, now we just have this chip that we can implant into our brain, which projects a virtual guitar, and then I can just Bluetooth it into everybody's brains. You know, maybe technology's going that way and none of this stuff is going to be important anymore. Or, you know, maybe it will become even more important and they'll kind of hit a wall with this kind of stuff and they'll stop selling modelers. But I don't think capitalism really works that way, so we're just going to see this constant stream of new products coming out. But, having said that, there's a couple of amp sims on the Fractal Axe-FX Ultra that I just love. Their Bogner model and their old Recto model, and they're kind of classic already to me. So, you know, it might be a case that's like, oh, you want to get a particular guitar tone from a certain era, yeah, go buy an old Axe-FX and use that old Bogner model from whatever firmware. So, yeah, maybe there'll be sort of classic units with classic firmwares or something like that, the guitar players sort of just have in their collection. And I know I'm going on a rant here, but if you think about like 80s rack gear, people are still using like old Lexicon PCM units and Eventide H3000s, and even further back, you know, like the Roland Dimension D. And these things were, you know, surpassed in technology, but they definitely have a distinguishable sonic footprint, and they become classic units for a reason. And I mean, take the Axe effects for example. Like, there's a couple of effects in the Axe Standard and Ultra maybe just in the Ultra, like the quad chorus and things like that, which just sound amazing. You know, they're not even in the AX8, it doesn't have a quad chorus block, but I love that quad chorus so much. So yeah, there's my thoughts on the whole thing. Let me know what you think about it, because it's one of those things which is going to be impossible to predict, but there's a couple of different scenarios. Larry Ashurst asks, attenuators, are the budget ones okay? I guess it depends on what your definition of budget is. I haven't tried a whole lot of different attenuators. I know the Weber Minimass is pretty affordable and it's pretty highly regarded as well. The Torpedo Captor in Australia runs $299, which to me is affordable, $300 for something that will let you load down your amp or attenuate it. I think that's a pretty good deal, and it's a really, really good unit. So are the budget ones okay? The Torpedo Captor is great. That is basically, and the Minimass is great as well. They're the only ones that I've actually tried. So yes, I think. Michael Miller asks, what are the optimum settings for the Fractal AX8 for live use? Well, it depends how you're using it. If you're using it with an FR system, I would really recommend dialing in your tones at gig volume. But in terms of the actual settings, you know, as long as you've kind of got your sounds roughly dialed in, the most important things to me are using the low and high cut in the cab block. I normally start at 80 Hz for the low cut, also known as the high pass. I always get those mixed around, and sound guys always make fun of me, which happened at the last gig I did, where I said, oh yeah, can you low pass that at like 8K? And he just looked at me like I was crazy, and I realized what I had said. Maybe I said high pass at 8K. Who knows? Anyway, yeah, they're the most important settings to me. Make sure that you've got the input pad set correctly for your guitar, where it's just tickling the red. You know, for low output guitars, 6 dB will probably do it. Humbucker guitars, 12 dB will normally do it. And yeah, basically, you know, you need to design the presets to do what you need to do. So there's plenty of instructional material out there to do that. Global settings, I normally use the global EQ set flat, and yeah, make sure that you're not clipping the output. That's the most important thing. So maybe set your amp levels around negative 12 dB to start. And yeah, they're pretty optimum settings, I think, for the AX8. And if you're using it for cable method, or you're using it into a power amp, these things are obviously going to be a little bit different. So basically just don't try to clip anything and you will be fine. Okay, here's how to play the riff for The Last Time by Ragdoll. I've done this at about 70 BPM, which is sort of a little bit more than half speed. Hopefully this is useful. I want to do a series on legato runs and things like this that I do. I'm not a very amazing legato player compared to, you know, these guys like Tom Quayle and Rick Graham or Glenn Proudfoot, who's an Australian guy who you should definitely check out. These guys are the masters. You should go and watch all their content and figure it out from there. You know, Sean Lane as well. Oh my god, Richie Kotzen, Greg Howe, you know, I can't even approximate what those guys do. But anyway, here's 2 legato runs that I use all the time. See if you can figure out what's going on and hopefully incorporate them into your playing and enjoy. Okay, my favorite amps in the AX8 for playing rhythm guitar, I love the 2C++ model and the Mark IV model. With the Mark IV model, I normally use Mark IV Plus, I think. With the bright switch off, I put the fat switch on. Huge sound. I love the Atomica High model, I love the Recto 1 Red model, and I really like the new Friedman 2018 models in the Quantum 10 firmware. For playing rhythm guitar, because they all feel really good, on the clean side of things, the Lone Star models and the Fender Twin are really good. Kind of dig those. I mean, there's so many amps that I like in there. And then for lead stuff, yeah, again, the Mark IV and the 2C++ are really good. Or the Atomica boosted up with the FET boost block. That's a pretty good one. The Rectifier is not really my favorite one for playing lead guitar. Still sounds pretty good, but yeah, I think probably the 2C++. If I had to pick just one for leads, that's probably the one. It's just so juicy. Okay, last question before we wrap all of this up. My buddy George asks, one thing about this video really quickly, it is really hard to say asks over and over again without saying arcs, and you guys probably can't tell the difference because of my Australian accent anyway, so I apologize about that. But my buddy George asks, do I prefer Picnic or Snickers? Well, Snickers has the nougat, but Picnic has the wafer, and I love both of those things, and it's kind of like a Strat versus Les Paul kind of debate. But I feel that like the Picnic is more popular in Australia. It's sort of like a rugged chocolate, and I really enjoy the texture of a Picnic. So I'm going to go like with a 50.5 split to Picnic. He also asks, Mesa or Soldano? Well, I have a dual rectifier, Rev G with a small logo, so an early one, and I have a Soldano Hot Rod 50 Plus. And I know there's a whole thing where, you know, the Mesa rectifier preamp is a direct clone of the Soldano SLO. And, you know, the SLO also inspired the 5150. So Mike Soldano and the SLO, they deserve their place in the Amplifier Hall of Fame because it's so important. But I actually record and play with my dual rectifier that little bit more than I actually do the Soldano. So the pragmatic choice is going to be the Mesa. James or Dave? Well, that's a really tough one because, you know, obviously James is just the right-hand master, and the more I listen to Metallica, the more I'm amazed by what he did. But Rust in Peace was my gateway drug to like heavy metal, like really heavy stuff and thrash metal, and I absolutely love that album. And I think I slightly prefer, you know, if I had to choose to listen to Megadeth or Metallica for the rest of my life, I'm more of a Megadeth guy. I got into them in high school. I appreciate both bands, I love them, but the older I get, the more I appreciate James. And, you know, Dave just seems like a real insufferable jerk. So, yeah, as like dudes, probably I would rather hang out with James Hetfield, but Dave Mustaine wrote Rust in Peace. So, from that perspective, I would go with Dave. Can I just choose Marty Friedman? He's like the ultimate metal lead guitar player, right? And the last one, Ozzy or Dio? Well, the second live album I ever heard, and one of the most important albums in my life, is the Ozzy Osbourne tribute album with Randy Rhoads. So I love Ozzy for that. I love all the old Sabbath stuff. But Ronnie James Dio is the greatest heavy metal singer of all time. That is undisputed. And I'm such a Dio fan, I'm gonna have to go with Dio. One other thing to add to that as well, Ryan, the singer in Ragdoll, his youngest son, one of his middle names is actually Dio. So that's how much Dio means to him, and means to Ragdoll, and means to me. Huge influence on the band, so that's why we're going with Dio. Imagine naming your son like, you know, Ozzy as one of their middle names. And being an Australian. That'd be weird. Okay, this has gone on too long. Okay, thank you guys so much for tuning in. The next Q&A will be coming up, so please get your questions in for that one here. Ask away. I'm more than happy to answer as many as I can. And if you enjoyed this video, please smash that subscribe button. There's going to be lots more content coming up very soon. Thanks again.